Terrible things are happening outside. At any time of night and day, poor, helpless people are being dragged out of their homes. Families are torn apart. Men, women, and children are separated. Children come home from school to find that their parents have disappeared. The Diary of Anne Frank, January 13th, 1943. If you initially thought this was a description of what's currently happening in the United States, you wouldn't be wrong. In fact, this isn't even new for the Trump administration. This quote from Anne Frank's The Diary of a Young Girl began to circulate during Trump's first term. It described an ICE raid in Mississippi in 2019, and his second term is already way worse. This video series is not a history lesson. It's an urgent warning. Democracy in the United States is dying. The United States in the early 21st century is looking like Germany in the early 20th century in some concerning ways. This video series shares 40 examples of just how similar these two leaders and these two movements really are. This same sequence of events happened in Turkey when Erdogan took power, in Hungary when Orban took power, in Russia when Putin took power, in Germany when Hitler took power, and in Italy when Mussolini took power. Democracy is backsliding into dictatorship under Trump in the exact same ways. Removing limits on presidential power, destroying equal branches of government, silencing free press by buying them or threatening them, controlling universities to stop free thinking, and crushing civil liberties. This backsliding of democracy must be stopped, or the United States of America will soon be nothing like the promises it was built on. Trump's rise could be compared to the rise of authoritarian leadership in any of the countries just mentioned. They've all crushed democracy in the same ways. Hitler and the Nazis were chosen for this comparison because Hitler is the one most likely to be known by the audience. Trump is known to admire Hitler and, as you'll see, appears to be copying his playbook. And, as you'll also see, MAGA is very similar to the early days of the Nazi Party. You might argue that MAGA is not to the level of extremism as what occurred in the final years of the Nazi regime. And that's true. But the Nazis, for most of their existence, were not as bad as what occurred in the final years of their own regime. Comparing the MAGA party and MAGA supporters to the Nazi party and Nazi supporters is being done to show the many real similarities of these groups. No insult is intended. An attempt has been made to balance being sensitive to diverse opinions with being accurate with historical and modern facts. The gravity of the historical example being used is not taken lightly. As you'll see with these similarities, this comparison is both appropriate and necessary. Part 1. A comparison of the two movements' backgrounds and beliefs. Number 1. Both movements grew out of an existing populist atmosphere. The Nazis didn't come about fully formed. They grew out of the folkish movement of the early 20th century. Like the Nazis, the MAGA party didn't come about fully formed. It grew out of the broader populist movements of the US in the late 20th to early 21st centuries. Folk in German means the same thing as folk in English. You know, white folk, black folk, country folk, city folk. Sounds the same, just spelled differently. The folkish movement was a right-wing nationalist movement, much like the US MAGA movement. Both include an emphasis on country or simple folk being better than immoral city or sophisticated folk. Likewise, German, or for MAGA, American folk were better than foreign folk. Number 2. Both movements' supporters came from similar backgrounds with similar values. Nazi and MAGA supporters have common backgrounds, similar fears, and largely the same prejudices. Both movements' ideals centered around the stereotypical, conservative, male-dominated culture. These guys felt like their status as a man was being eroded. The culture shifts toward a liberal democracy and larger cities, and away from a simple authoritarian and rural world left them behind and left them feeling insecure, afraid, and angry. Both groups supported what they saw as traditional family values, the kind of family values where the man is the head of the family and the woman is subservient to him, cooks, cleans, and cares for the children that he sires. Both of these groups support what they saw as traditional religious values and were, and are, quick to defend threats to conservative religious norms. It doesn't matter that they don't know much of anything about the Bible or what Jesus actually taught. It's the in-group belonging that matters. Number 3. Both movements were based on claims of being the legitimate people of the country who were being threatened by foreigners. It seems that extremist ideologies always need a boogeyman to fear. It's always some cosmic fight they're fighting against some evil that they need to justify their existence. And of course, the more concrete they can embody that evil, the more effective it is as a boogeyman. Having an other to hate also helps to reinforce the sameness of the movement's supporters. The Nazis made a big deal about Blut und Boden, blood and soil, and claims that they, the true Germans, were in some sense tied to the land itself. To be fair, the Germans had a stronger claim on this than US citizens do. MAGA likes to think of the US as being founded by white European Christian men and ignore the fact that they weren't the first ones here. The United States of America is a nation of immigrants. If you're not Navajo or Cherokee or Inuit or some other native, you are the immigrant. Both movements had an underlying fear of being overran by foreigners. This foreign infestation reproduces more quickly than white people, so it won't be long before we've lost all that's good about the country. That's the argument anyway. It's a conspiracy theory known as the white genocide. In recent years, this has been the underlying push for white US citizens to have more children. They talk about concerns of the economy collapsing with population reducing, but that's just because it sounds better than their actual beliefs. Same then as it is now. Number 4. Both movements were anti-establishment and saw politics as a fundamental fight against good and evil. Both movements were critical of the established political structure. They thought it was corrupt, and worse. For the Nazis, this was referred to as the stab in the back myth and the belief in the November criminals. The stab in the back myth was the myth that German military was too mighty to lose World War I, but was instead forced to lose it by powerful Jewish leaders and communists that secretly worked internally within Germany to sabotage the war effort. Then the so-called November criminals, the German leadership that signed the Treaty of Versailles that ended World War I, were working with the Marxist communist leftists to take over the country. The leftist Weimar establishment was the cause for all the nation's problems, to hear Hitler tell it. For the US MAGA movement, the establishment is made up of the political left, supported by what they call rhinos, Republican in name only. secret, powerful leftist elites supposedly make up the deep state, a shadow group secretly controlling the government. That is, when they aren't doing all manner of the worst types of criminal and immoral behaviors. In both cases, the movement's propaganda frames the fight as a cosmic struggle, and together with the collective narcissism of the supporters, has otherwise sane people believing the most outlandish claims. Number 5. Both movements wanted to return the country to an idealized time when it was great. Conservative Germans had this romanticized view of things being better back then, before modernization and before liberals and foreigners ruined the country. They believed they and others who held their beliefs were the true Germans, that traditional German culture and language were superior to all the others, and that everyone else could either follow it or get out. Likewise, conservative people in the United States have this romanticized view of things being better back then, back before automation, before liberals and foreigners ruined the country. They believe that they and those who hold their beliefs are the true Americans, that traditional United States culture and language are superior to all the others, and that everyone else could either follow it or get out. Both movements are vague on exactly when this supposedly great period was, but that's convenient for the movement leaders because it allows the supporters to interpret the slogan however they want to. They can just gloss over history with their version of a perfect world that never was. And they can pretend that they're special, that they would be something more if only the enemy hadn't ruined it for them. Number 6. Both movements were anti-enlightenment and anti-modernization. Both movements are directly against intellectualism because they see it as leftist propaganda, and against education more broadly because they've been taught by prior generations that thinking for yourself is used by the devil to draw people away from God and make them immoral. Both movements encouraged book burning, or in the case of books that were too popular to ban, they were rewritten to remove or add desirable nationalistic traits or language to the story of its characters so that they fit the party's propaganda. Beyond their mistrust of intellectualism and education, advancing technologies were also mistrusted by the supporters of both movements, even if the party's leaders embraced technology advancement. Folk Germans, like MAGA Americans, disliked technological advances coming to factories and farming. And in the case of MAGA, they've gone all the way around to being with the far left when it comes to being anti-vaccine. All of this anti-intellectualism serves the leaders by reducing the intellectual capacity of their supporters. This makes the supporters dependent on the leader or the leader's media outlets as the only source of truth, which of course makes them easy to manipulate and control. Number 7. Both movements suppressed women's rights. Both the Nazis and MAGA believe that a woman's place is in the home. Women are expected to give birth, cook and clean for her husband, and maybe organize church functions. Women are not to be involved with work outside of the home or politics generally. Those areas are man's work. The Nazis made abortion illegal. Well, for racially pure couples, abortion was illegal. It was actually encouraged for impure couples. Likewise, MAGA has made abortion illegal, as far as they can in their own areas anyway, and are constantly pushing to make it illegal everywhere. To both groups, women are baby factories and servers of men. This video discussed similarities between the Nazi and MAGA movements' backgrounds and beliefs. In the next video, we'll look at how, in both cases, the leader took over the movement. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to sharpen the way you might think.